Knitters, welcome to episode 98 of the Knitty McPurly podcast. I am your host, Devin Ventry. This is Knitty McPurly. You can find me at knittymcpurly.com. On Instagram, I am Knitty McPurly, and if you want to email me, you can reach me at devin@knittymcpurly.com. It is a gorgeous Sunday morning out there. It was 37 degrees this morning when I got up, and it's still pretty cold, but the sun is shining today, unlike last week. Also, you might notice I have mixed up my background a little bit. All I did was kind of turn the camera this way. I was looking at a few other podcasts this week, and I just saw some interesting backgrounds, and I thought, I think I need to mix it up a little bit. This is nice, don't you think? I got this plant at IKEA a couple weeks ago, and I had it in a rather dark corner of my living room because I really want a plant in that corner, but I think it's going to be happier here. I think maybe a fake plant would be better in the dark corner downstairs. So anyway, let us start off the podcast with progress and shop news. I was sick a lot this week. I don't know if I'm sick or if I just have allergies. I'm pretty sure it's just allergies. I strangely got a lot of knitting done. I forgot to get my sweater. Hold on, let me go get it. Okay, if you remember from last time, I introduced this sweater that was a work in progress from, I don't know, like 3 years ago. I started it, and this is some yarn from Kim Dye's Yarn. The bottom is rolling a little bit because I just have a really small rib at the bottom, and once I block it, it will lay properly. This is not a pattern. This was just me fooling around. I cast on some stitches and did some raglan shaping, and I added in a puff into the sleeve. I finished one sleeve and I left it all puffy. You can see the color has pooled there a little bit, but I love that. I love hand-dyed yarn. I love when it's imperfect. I did not alternate skeins, so let's take a look at the colors. You might be able to tell a little bit. I see some kind of striping in the middle there. I don't know. I love it. I just think it's great. So what I did is I did not decrease the sleeve at all. I just straight knit it. And then when I got to the cuff, I did a knit two together all the way around. And this was actually my second try. My first try, I did like knit two together, and I didn't do any math. I didn't feel like it. I just was like, well, I'm going to try it and see if I like it. And if I don't, then I'll pull it out and do it differently. And that's exactly what I did. And this I love. So it ended up being a sleeve with a puff at the top, and then it's wide. I haven't actually tried this on. I want it to land right below the elbow. Don't want it to be above the elbow. So if it is not long enough, I will rip back if I have enough yarn. So I'm pretty far on the other sleeve, and I still have all this yarn left over. So this makes me think that if I need to pull it back and knit a little bit more, I was afraid of running out of yarn. And so that was my thought, because I originally thought I might have enough for long sleeves, but as I was knitting, I thought, I don't know, because there's just so much to this sleeve. It's just a really wide sleeve. I don't know if you can see it. You probably can't. But this yarn has a lot of colors in it. Like there's some yellow, there's some blue, even though it's kind of a pale mauvey pink. It's just a really cool color. And it's a single ply. But anyway, I've been cruising along on that. It's just kind of a non-thinking project. I can just pick it up and work on it. It's just stockinette. It's been really nice. I kind of wondered if I would ever finish this, but I guess I was just waiting for this lull to be able to pick it up and finish it, and it's been really nice. I don't know about you, but I do love a good stockinette project. It's almost like knitting socks. You know, you just pick it up and work on it, and it's just been delightful. So we'll see. I think by next week, after I'm done filming this podcast and after I get it up on YouTube, I'm planning on sitting on the couch and chilling for the rest of the day with some tea, and whoever else wants to join me on the couch, maybe we'll put a movie on. So I should get a little bit more done on this, And then we'll see if this isn't long enough and if I have enough yarn, which it looks like I will. I have a good bit left. I'll be able to make the sleeves a little bit longer. We shall see, but I've been working on that. I've been finishing up the advent calendars, but I gotta tell you, like, I've just been so lightheaded and it's made me feel kind of sick to my stomach. So I haven't been doing as much of that work as I would have liked. Yesterday, I really thought I could get them finished up, but just not feeling well enough. So those are going to ship at the end of October. There are a few left. If you have not pre-ordered an advent calendar from me, those are going to be going out within the next couple weeks, and that is pretty exciting. Also, I am wearing, let's see, I'm just going to stand up here. I am wearing my Latvian shawl, which was last year's Lent calendar. You can see this is 40 10-gram minis. So toward the end, when the rows got really long, several days had different shades of yellow. Toward the beginning, it starts out and you have, many, many rows because of the rows being so short, but as they get longer, the colors get similar in this shape of shawl. There will be a Lent calendar again this year. It'll go on sale January 1st. That's always fun. But if you're interested in knitting this shawl, you can still get the pattern on my website. Again, it's the Latvian shawl. And you can use scraps. I love a scrap project because what knitter doesn't have a million fingering weight scraps laying around? But it's great for an advent calendar. My advent calendar this year is DK because we're doing accessories. But if you have an advent calendar from a previous year or, like I said, leftover skeins, that's really nice to have to do projects like this that are scrappy. Okay, word and topic of the week. So last time we talked about corrugated ribbing, and I highlighted this pattern by Pearl Soho that does corrugated ribbing in a way that I haven't seen before, which is as a mosaic knit. So instead of a regular 1x1 stranded, you only work one color at a time and then you just slip the other color. I did just a very small tutorial of this. I started to work on something that could eventually be a hat. I'm really just playing around and trying out techniques. That's my plan. This is as far as I am right now, but I just want to show you what that purl round looks like. So I'm going to put that right here. Okay, I just wanted to do a quick little demonstration showing this technique from Pearl Soho that I talked about last time. So this is a mosaic color work where we are working a rib in two colors. So I've already gotten started here, but I am working with my Fontaine dark pink yarn, and I'm just going to be slipping this lighter pink color, whoops, and then bringing the yarn to the front and purling the Fontaine, yarn to the back, slip, yarn to the front, purl. Now this is the only kind of annoying part of this pattern, and you get used to it, but if you are, a beginner knitter, it's best, I think, to just do a 1x1. I don't know, both of those things are a little bit challenging. But this makes a nice corrugated rib. So you can see it's a little fussy. It's not quite as quick and easy as I thought it would be originally, because on the purl round, you're purling the one color and then you yarn to the back, slip, yarn to the front, purl, yarn to the back, slip. So that is a little bit more fussy. You're gonna get used to it. But again, it's every other round. On the opposite round, you're knitting what would be, in the case of the hat I just showed you, the lighter color, you would knit, slip, but in that case, the yarn is already held to the back. Now, with a Latvian braid, which is what I want to talk about today, and I want to go into the history of the word braid, but since we're on this topic right now, I'm just going to lead that right into a Latvian braid. The reason the corrugated rib and Latvian braid go so well together is because if you are working a corrugated rib, then you have already done the setup round for a Latvian braid. To set up a Latvian braid, you need to have a 1x1, and you need to then work it in this fashion. All right, today we're going to be working in worsted weight yarn. I have two colors here. I have Fontaine and Morel. Now, if you followed me for any length of time, you know that I do tutorials Bob Ross style, which means that I am not an expert showing you how to do something expertly, but I am learning along with you. So there are lots of tutorials. I'm going to link one below that I thought was really good on how to do a Latvian braid, but here I'm just going to try it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull our 2 strands of yarn to the front, and I'm going to go ahead and start with this lighter color. I knit Continental. So what we're going to do, now to knit a Latvian braid, you basically need this setup here. This is a 1x1 color work. Now I did it like I showed in the previous video with the mosaic technique where I'm slipping every other stitch. So I assume that will work. Feels like it should. Let's give it a try. Now, in order to make a Latvian braid, it is only 2 rounds. We are going to start with our braid pointing that direction. And I'm going to go ahead. Do I have them both to the front? Where's the other one? Oh, here it is. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and purl. And I will take this color under and the darker color over. And I'll purl that one. All right, and then we'll go on. Oops, I did it right. Under and over, and we purl. And basically what you're gonna end up with, this is going to twist your yarn up, but that's okay, because when we go do our second round, we're going to untwist it. Am I going under like I said? I don't know if I am or not. Yeah, I am. See, under, right? That makes sense. The light is not great in here. Can you see that all right? So I'm just purling. And you can see what you're doing here is you are showing these stitches here. The yarn is getting very twisted, as you can see, but that's okay, because when we do our second round, we are going to untwist it. Now, I do let go of the yarn every time, because while I don't normally do that when I'm working color work, I want to make sure that I am going under and over. I'm twisting the same way every time, see? So I take my yarn under. Because if that's what makes the Latvian braid lean to one side, is that twist. Oh, it's gonna look so nice. I just love the way it looks. It looks so good. There is a Latvian braid cast on, and maybe next week I will try out the Estonian braid, which is really cool too. I don't think it's quite as cool as the Latvian braid. Sorry, Estonians. It's interesting that it's just a purl bump and a twist. That's all it is. One way and then the other way. And that's it. 2 rows and you're done. Oh, so much twist. Come on. See, the twisting has led me to a knot. Come on. I wonder if I could ignore it and just let it untwist in the next round. Let's see. It does get a little unwieldy toward the end. This is the part where I undo the knot. All the twisting has led to a knot. There we go. Oh, no, almost. There we go. It's just too twisty. All right, let's see if we can get a little bit of untwistedness here so we could. Yeah, so I have 90 stitches cast on here, and that is a lot of twist. All right, we got it. We're doing it. All right. Was Bob Ross ever this clumsy? Well, Bob Ross didn't have twisty yarn over 90 stitches. 90 stitches worth of twist. Couple more, 4 more. All right. Now, we're going to be doing the same thing on the next round, except we are going to be untwisting. Thank goodness, because my yarn keeps getting tied up in knots. You can really understand why this technique is used more on a smaller round, like a mitten. I have enough stitches cast on for a hat here, so it's just causes your yarn to get a little bit more tangly. All right, so twisty. If I can just, kind of untwist where I'm working, I can move the twist down the row a little bit. Okay, now this time we're going to be twisting the other way. So we're going to still have the yarn in the front because we want to see those floats. That's what makes the Latvian braid. But we want to be going over. So let's go ahead and we're going to purl, and then we're going to go up and over the other way, which will naturally untwist our yarn, and it will allow the beautiful pattern to develop. How do the Latvians do this? Is anyone Latvian? Send help. Send help. Detangler. All right. Come on. We got this. We're going this way this time. My daughters like to find those videos that say things like super unsatisfying pictures, like where the tile doesn't line up and stuff like that. This is one of those unsatisfying knitting videos where the yarn gets tangled and the knitter gets frustrated. Let's see if we get what we want in the end. Will tangly frustration still yield us the braid? It's looking pretty good. Yeah, I see it. I see the braid. So all you're doing here is you're still purling. You're still holding your yarn to the front, but instead of going this way with the yarn, you're going the other way. And that untangles. It's much more satisfying. I feel like the untangle row or round in this case is just more satisfying. It's like when you've been knitting something circular for a long time and you have to pick it up and let it spin to get all the yarn untwisted because you've been turning it the same way. Still have a tangled mess over here. This is what we're working with. It tangled, it twisted, and why? It's just the twisting that did it. Maybe I will just persevere, keep untwisting, and hope for the best. So I guess it's a little bit frustrating if you're doing a circumference that is larger than a mitten. I see why these Latvian braids got put on mittens a lot, because it's a lot of stitches to twist. Though people do them on hats. I think on a sweater it would just be frightful. Although you can knit a Latvian braid flat. I have not done it. But if you Google that, or if you search it up on YouTube, you will find that it exists. I'm in pretty deep here. I hope I'm doing it right. Uh-oh. See, do you see what I did there? I went back and I twisted the wrong way. Just gonna unpick a couple of stitches where I twisted wrong. Yeah, that's right, but the ones after that are not. I'm still twisting the way that I twisted the first time. I think this is the last one I need to undo. Okay, so we want it to go this way. It's just one of those days, folks. It's just one of those days. But it's gonna be fine. We're gonna do this thing. This time we're going, the first time we kind of went counterclockwise. Now we're twisting clockwise. We want the yarn to go this way. It just takes practice, like anything else. Yeah, see the braid? It's so pretty. Is it worth the heartache? I don't know. Yeah, I recommend you watch the tutorial that I have linked below, because this lady does it better than me. This is my Bob Ross. Well, I'm just gonna do this happy little Latvian braid and hope for the best. Seems to be working out. Get a little loop in there, we just pull it. We're getting there, we're getting untwisted. Now, if you wanted to make the arrow go the other direction, then you would just twist the other way. Whoops, there we go. But like I said, don't take my word for it. Watch a better tutorial than this and go try it out for yourself. It's a lot of fun. It's just so pretty in the end too. Totally worth it. All right, how are we doing on the twist? We're almost untwisted. We're almost back. All right. Now I am going to continue with just the dark pink so that you can see the Latvian braid. Doesn't that look so pretty? That looks really, really pretty. I don't have great light in here, but that is how it's done. Whew. That is how you work a Latvian braid. Let's talk about the word braid for a minute. Going back a little bit. Now, the word braid as a verb means to plait, knit, weave, or twist together from around 1200. Braidin, from Old English bregdin. Now, this is interesting because most of these words that the word braid comes from, most of the meaning doesn't have anything to do with braid. From the Old English bregdin, meaning to move quickly, pull, shake, swing, throw, like in wrestling, draw, as in to draw a sword, bend, weave, knit, join together, change color, vary, scheme, feign, or pretend. So this verb is like, it's like a multi-purpose verb. It's like bitte in German. You can use it to mean whatever you want. Class 3, strong verb, past tense, bragged, past participle, brogden, from Proto-Germanic bregdanen, to make sudden jerky movements from side to side. Compared to Old Norse, bregda maybe, to brandish, turn about, move quickly, or braid. From the Old Saxon, bregden, to weave or braid. So in English, the verb survives currently only in the narrow definition, like to plait hair. So when I use the word braid, I mean like a plait, or sometimes, as the British would say, a plait. Now, the braid as a noun also hails from about 1200, meaning a deceit, stratagem, or trick. Around 1300, it came to mean a sudden or quick movement, in part from the stem found in the Old English gebrägt, which sounds German to me, craft or fraud, Old Norse brago, meaning deed or trick. I guess a braid is kind of a trick, isn't it? And in part from or influenced by the related braid, the word that as we know it, meaning anything plaited or entwined. So that's interesting that the word braid comes from words that don't mean braid. Interesting. So as I was searching for more meanings of the word braid, I, of course, came across braid in hair, which dates originally, it seems, back to African culture. I guess that makes sense. So the origin of braids can be traced back about 5,000 years in African culture to about 3,500 BC. And they have been popular among African women since then. Braiding started in Africa with the Himba people of Namibia. These people have been braiding hair for centuries. In many African tribes, braided hairstyles were a unique way to identify each tribe. Braid patterns and hairstyles were an indication of a person's tribe, age, marital status, wealth, power, and religion. Neat. Braiding was and is a social art. Because of the amount of time it can take, people would often take the time to socialize. So I'm imagining, kind of in these old African societies, it'd be like a early American quilting circle, where the women get together to do this craft and, they talk amongst themselves. It began with the elders braiding their children, and then the children would watch and learn from them. Younger children would start practicing on each other and eventually learn their traditional styles. This tradition of bonding was carried on for generations and quickly made its way across the world. It was around the 1900s when braids became popular around the world. Almost all women, children, and most men in some way had their hair braided. So around 3500 BC, they were doing cornrows in Africa. In Egypt, they were doing what's called an Afro box braid around 3100 BC. Greece, they were doing the halo braid in the 1st century. Native Americans had pigtail braids in the 5th century AD. And in Europe, the crown braid was very popular from 1066, interestingly. The Norman invasion, the Battle of Hastings, moved people around to about 1485. It's just the one period I happen to know a little bit about. China used the staircase braid from 1644 to 1912. I don't know my Chinese history very well to know why those years are significant. In the Caribbean, dates back the modern cornrows as we think of them now in the 1970s. And then in 2005, when YouTube was launched, braids became super popular all over again. And I personally know all about this because I have 3 daughters. And my older girls still, my daughter is I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, and they still love braids. My little one, for some reason, is less interested in braids. I don't know why, but if she can get her older sister's attention by having them braid her hair, she does love that. So I wanted to talk about the Latvian braid because we call it a braid because it is similar 2 braided hair, but braided hair traditionally, I think, uses 3 chunks of hair, whereas the Latvian braid is using 2 different colors of yarn. Now, these mittens that were knit in the Baltic states, which is Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, these are in Eastern Europe. They are north of Poland and Belarus, but south of Finland and west of Russia. So I'm sure I've shown you the map there so you can kind of see where this area is that we're focusing on this knitting technique. Interestingly, when I was researching the Latvian braid, I also found other types of braids that I'm going to talk about on another podcast. But there's also an Estonian braid, which looks similar, but is actually quite different. So that's interesting. Now, what I'm about to read talks about Latvians historically, but I'm not exactly sure what time period it is referring to. In creating mittens, color and pattern were very important. The third most important thing was the yarn. Though all regions of Latvia had their unique patterns and colors, they all incorporate symbols related to the deities. So this would have been a pre-Christian religion. The most common symbol in current use is the sun. Historically, young women would need 100 pairs of mittens before they got married. At the wedding, she would give a pair to the minister, the groom's family each got a pair, the driver of the wedding vehicle, kitchen helpers, even the barn animals received mittens. Interesting. A family member would retrieve the mittens from the barn later. Even the wedding meal was eaten wearing mittens. One of the women I spoke with personally, so I got this from an article online that I'll link below, knit over 1,500 mittens in her life. Is that the oldest known mitten fragment was found in Estonia. It was discovered in 1949, but it is thought to date back to the 1200s, somewhere between 1238 and 1299. And there are lots of mitten fragments that have been found from that area. So, color work mittens dating from this period can still be found, even though they don't look great because wool just does not hold up over time. It just doesn't. So anyway, that was a really interesting little jog back into history. It's not as specific as I would like because there are some things that just talk about the previous time. I'm not exactly sure of, when these different color work techniques came into popularity or how they were used, or when, for example, the anecdote about the bride getting married and giving out the mittens. I don't know what year that goes with. But again, on another day when I have more energy, I might have done a deeper dive. But for today, that is what we have. So anyway, moving right along to knitting fantasies. All right, so in my search of Latvian knitting, I found a trilogy of books, and they are called Knit Like a Latvian. There's one dedicated to socks, one dedicated to mittens, and a third one that is dedicated to accessories that aren't socks or mittens. I'm just going to be putting up pictures as I'm talking right now from these books. They look really interesting. It is a lot of color work, a lot of high contrast color work. Personally, I think the shawls look really interesting, although they do become kind of a one-sided object because with a colorwork shawl, the backside is not really something that you want to show. So that's what's good about colorwork knitting in the round, is that whether it's a hat or mittens or a sweater, you're always putting those floats to the back, and that's always nice. But I thought that these books look really interesting. I had not heard of this author before. Again, I will link all of that below in case you're interested. All of these can be found on Amazon, and they just look like a lot of fun to me. The Baltic states have a lot of history, and I would love to do a deep dive into that more in future episodes. That would be really fun. All right, so here's what happened. I have a story today from a knitting podcast watcher named Rachel. And this is a great story. I think a lot of us will be able to relate to this in life going on, and it has its busy times and it has its easier times, and knitting kind of sees us through the whole way, and it's there for us all the time, even when everything else can be a little bit crazy. So this is from Rachel. She says, "My knitting journey began rather serendipitously in a Texas Walmart 24 years ago at age 22. I was an avid crocheter on the hunt for something new to make, but all the patterns I liked were knitted, and I didn't know how to knit. My husband said, 'Why don't you buy some needles and a book and teach yourself?' I took him up on it and left the store armed with a set of clover bamboo knitting needles, a leisure arts booklet with how to knit instructions, and several patterns, and some light blue acrylic yarn." That is amazing, because I tried to teach myself from a book one time and I just could not. I could not. So anybody who can teach themselves from just pictures, my hat's off to you. That is amazing. Not knowing there was any other way, I spent the next few days slowly following the English style picture tutorial and successfully produced a swatch of stockinette stitch. I was beyond thrilled with myself and selected a scarf pattern from the booklet that had a pattern called ladder stitch, which seemed doable. It took about a month, but I completed the scarf, added fringe, and proudly sent it to my dad for Christmas that year. My skill set expanded to include a simple stockinette V-neck vest and many more scarves. Sadly, my marriage would end in divorce 2 years later, and I found myself back in Virginia with an infant and a toddler to raise on my own. Time and money are scarce resources as a single parent of 2 small children, and my knitting would go into hibernation for almost 6 years. At 30, I remarried an amazing Christian man with 2 sons slightly older than my children, and we set about blending our new family. Add to that a new baby and a new business, and my knitting would stay in hibernation for a couple more years. Amen, sister, I get it. One Saturday, while my 2-year-old was napping, I dug out my needles and the bulky Lion brand stash of yarn I had abandoned 8 years ago and set about casting on for a simple garter stitch scarf. It felt amazing to be reunited with my needles and once again to be creating fabric from mere sticks and string. I managed to carve out knitting time around raising 5 young children, working full-time and supporting my husband while he worked in the evenings at our small business, in addition to his full-time job. Oh my goodness, that is insane. It was a crazy busy time during which my knitting was an oasis of pure joy, especially since I had started therapy to begin working through childhood trauma. When it rains, it pours. Eventually, I got tired of making bulky scarves in a variety of stitch patterns and wanted a new challenge. About 4 years into my new marriage, I discovered knit picks, interchangeable circular needles, and continental style. Ravelry had just debuted, and I set about searching for a simple sweater pattern, and my love for cables was born. So much for simple. I don't remember the name of the design I settled on, but it was heavily cabled, and I spent a solo weekend at the beach reworking the patterns so the cables lined up with the ribbing. The rework was successful, though the sweater turned out too big and was gifted to my sister. It's like my cowl from last time. Whoever you give it to is going to be so impressed. Thus began my education about the importance of gauge. Yes. Over the next 5 years, I would enhance my knitting library, design a couple of free hats I published on Ravelry, and discover natural fibers and indie dyed yarn. My twin nieces received hand-knit gifts for their birthdays in the form of hats and hacked sweater patterns, and I continued to refine my garment knitting skills. Gift knitting would make up about half of finished objects, and I got into the habit of praying for the recipient as I knit their gift. At age 39, after 5 years of a unique type of Christian therapy called mind-renewing healing prayer, the walls holding my mind together came crashing down with a diagnosis of dissociative identity disorder, previously known as multiple personality disorder, as a result of childhood trauma inflicted by non-parental family members. Knitting became a crucial coping mechanism for dealing with the crippling anxiety that comes with dissociative identity disorder. I continued therapy and working full-time while learning how to cope in my new reality, and knitting helped me survive those first couple of years. In March of 2019, I experienced the shock of being laid off after my boss unexpectedly passed away. At this point, knitting became an obsession that saw me frantically cranking out a variety of featherweight cardigans about every 2 weeks. The featherweight cardigan is a pattern by Hannah Fettig. I have knit that pattern, I think, twice myself. And if you're knitting one of those every 2 weeks, that's a lot of knitting because it's a fairly tightly knit fingering weight cardigan. So, wow, that is a lot of knitting. She says, I didn't need another sweater, but I needed to knit another sweater. Shawls were wonderful pieces to knit as well, as they made great gifts and gave me a break from the brain power used to design my latest featherweight mod. She didn't send me any pictures, but it would be cool to see those. She says, during the pandemic, I discovered Japanese stitch dictionaries, oh man, and the Coco Knits method from watching the Fruity Knitting podcast. That's a great podcast. Since my preferred yarn is fingering weight indie dyed merino, I gravitated to the easily hacked Coco Knits Eva pattern and set about using it as a springboard to design my perfect cardigan using a variety of Japanese stitch patterns. Wow, that is hardcore. That's a lot of stuff. Though color work has never been my jam, I purchased a bohus stickning kit for the Blue Mist, which I plan to knit next year for my oldest daughter's 25th birthday. That's hardcore. 24 years in and now a full-time mom to our youngest daughter, I knit every day, though I'm no longer a frantic, monogamous featherweight cardigan knitter. I suppose you could say that I am living proof of the healing powers of knitting, as it has been my steadfast companion since purchasing my first set of needles in that Texas Walmart and has seen me through the pretty tough curveballs life has thrown at me. Wow, that is some hardcore stuff and some really hardcore knitting. Oh my goodness. I would love to hang out with Rachel and just pick her brain because it sounds like she knows a lot of stuff. And Japanese stitch dictionaries, I love them too, but I like to simplify them and incorporate them. Anybody who knits straight Japanese stitch patterns, like that's hardcore because that stuff is really, really complicated. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. This has been great. Hopefully next week we'll be able to talk a little bit more about Latvia and Estonia and their knitting tradition. But leave me a comment. And if you have a knitting story, email it to me, devin@knittymcpurly.com. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.